Okay, good morning everyone. My name is Melrose Taguan and today's topic is about teaching English to K to 12. So I have here one question. How is the teaching of English different in the K to 12 as compared in the previous curriculum? Well, this question will be answered later on. Okay, let's have our objectives. First, be familiarized with the curricular framework in teaching English in the K to 12. And then second is plan students' activities integrating language skills found in the English language curriculum guide. So now let's take a look to our English language curriculum. First, we have philosophy, guiding principles, the needs of the learners, the outcomes, the curriculum framework, and the assessment. For philosophy, language is a basis of all communication and a primary instrument of thought. Also, thinking, learning, and language are interrelated. Well, language is governed by rules and systems that is called language conventions, which are used to explore and communicate meaning. Well, we tend to know the language is the basis of all communication. It is the mean of a communication process. Okay. Language also defines culture, which is essential in understanding oneself or personal identity, forming interpersonal relationships or socialization, intending experiences, reflecting in thought and action, contributing to a better society. Well, language therefore is central to people's intellectual, social, and emotional development and has an essential role in all K learning areas. Well, proficiency in the language enables people to process and keep abreast of information with a wider and more diverse communication. Well, sometimes we tend to misinterpret people's culture because they don't have their effective language, and somehow having a effective language can essentially understand the personal identity of a person. Somehow language also forms a interpersonal relationships or a socialization, and also tend to experiences, reflect on thought and action, and contribute to a better society. Well, somehow language also is central to people's intellectual, social, and emotional development or any holistic aspects and has an essential role in all K learning areas. Thus, proficiency in language enables people to process abreast information and continues a wider and more diverse communication. So now we have our guiding principles. First, all languages are interrelated and interdependent. Well, somehow there's a lot of languages here in the world, although some have differences or it has a different structure, different grammar, different alphabetical arrangement, affixes, and other thing. But somehow all languages are interrelated because they called the languages and it plays a key role in the language learning. Second is language acquisition and learning is an active process that begins at birth and continues throughout life. So there's a difference between the language learning and acquisition. Language learning is from birth throughout, whereas the language acquisition, you can adapt the language of one culture, or once you intrude to another group, you can acquire their language just to form socialization between them. Well, also long learning requires meaning. Well, if you learn without meaning, then your learning is senseless or nonsense. Fourth, learners learn about language and how to use it effectively through their engagement with and the study of text. So we can learn a language and how we going through engage with that thing or to that language or to study a text using that language. So fifth, successful language learning involves viewing, listening, speaking, reading, and writing activities. So in this manner, language learning, of course, involves the macro skills. So once you develop your macro skills, you also develop your language learning. And six, language learning involves recognizing, accepting, valuing, and building on students' existing language competence and extending the range of language available to students. So language learning is, of course, you can recognize, you accept, you value, you build students' existing language competence, and you also had to extend the range of language available to students. And now we have the principles of teaching language or English language. So first is to develop thinking and language through interactive learning. So somehow some other students can learn throughout or can learn the language through the interactive learning. Second, develops communicative competence and critical literacy. Well, this critical thinking skills or literacy is and competence are both essential in developing communicative language learning. Third, draws on literature in order to develop students' understanding on their literary heritage. So somehow this is historical. Your students can draw something in order to develop the students' understanding of their literary heritage. Fourth is to draw on informational text and multimedia in order to build academic vocabulary and strong content knowledge. So it has something to do with a graphic or visual orientation or visual or illustrations. Also, develop students' oral language and through the appropriately challenging learning. So it has something to do with the reading comprehension. Six is to emphasize these writing arguments, explanatory, informative text, and narratives. So it has something to do with a technical and creative writing. Okay, so number seven provides explicit skill instruction in reading and in writing. Eight is to build on a language experiences, knowledge, and interest that students bring to school. And nine, nurtures students' sense of common ground in using language or languages for communication as present or future global citizen to prepare them to participate in school and in civic life. And 10 is assesses and reflects students' ability to interpret and or communicate to the target lesson. So now we have the needs of the learners. So we tend to know that we are in the 21st century and we call our students as the Generation Z, which is the digital natives. The needs of learners now that they are born with a complete technology, they were born with PCs, mobile phones, gaming devices, MP3 players, and the ubiquitous internet. They do not know life without technology. They can email, text, and use computers without any problems. They can understand and master advancement in technology. Social media platforms are a way to communicate with the outside world. Well, we tend to know that social media platforms are the most essential means that the student use. Like they did not engage to any interactive or socialization. Okay, they are not bothered about privacy and are willing to share intimate details about themselves with a complete strangers. They have virtual friends and